welcome to April's Prayer Focus. This month we'll be looking at a passage in the Old Testament, Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verses 1 to 12, and it talks about time. And we've had 12 months, 12 different months than any of us would ever anticipated this time last year. And the passage talks about there's a time for different things to happen. And so I thought it might be a good idea to reflect on that idea that there is a time for things to happen and that this is all in God's time. And so a year of lockdown, which is now starting to ease, but we're still not sure. There's still no real certainty of what's going to happen. It may have been difficult, it may have had some good times, but it's certainly been very different. And as a church, it's been uncomfortable and left us with a desire maybe to really be together, a desire to sing, a desire to worship, and that's good. But at the moment, while we can't do those things, it's quite difficult. So what are we going to do as we explore the 12 verses? Well, I'm hoping that you'll be able to draw yourself a clock, divide it into 12 segments like a pizza, and you're going to write what the verse is saying to you. Or it might just be that something strikes you at that time, or that God has spoken to you at the start of the lockdown. Maybe you can work through, so what happened in the first month of the lockdown, how you felt in your relationship with him. So what do I mean by seasons? Well, obviously we first of all think of spring, summer, autumn, winter, and we think of the different clothes we wear, the different effects on plants and trees. So we've got beautiful green trees, then we have the lovely browns and yellows and oranges of the leaves as they die. We have spring where shoots come up and we get excited and we think we're moving towards summer. We enjoy the heat. We enjoy being able to go to the seaside and going out for days and it's warm. All those things that we're used to. And if we're a farmer, we'd have times when we'd be growing, when we'd be harvesting, when new lambs or new calves would be born. When you'd have to think of bringing the animals down off the hills. There's all sorts of things that we can think of. And in our lives, we think about maybe tidying up our own garden and doing different things. But we certainly haven't considered 12 months of being inside and washing our hands an awful lot. So there's all sorts of different things that we can draw from this. And I would say that over my Christian journey, I've travelled through many seasons, and some of them have been a bit more like winter, where I've had to be quieter and huddled in by the fire, as it were, and not running on full energy, finding things quite a bit difficult. Maybe walking in the snow, that's an image which is quite hard and it's cold, nice as snow is when it first falls. And other times I've been racing along and I've really enjoyed my Christian experience. And when I was younger, I used to go on a holiday to Spring Harvest, where I grew and in my faith immensely. I've been to MCYC camps where I've really deepened my awareness of God and gained many, many Christian friends who've helped me. And I'm sure I'm being able to discuss things with them has helped me to grow. There's been times in my life where I've had great sadness, where I lost my dad, I lost my mother-in-law, I lost a very close friend. And they've been difficult times, but God has been with me. But sadly, there's some people who go through those really difficult times and they blame God and they move away at the very time when they really need to be clinging on to God and hearing his voice. And maybe throughout lockdown, you felt a bit removed from God. Or maybe you've actually drawn closer. You've spent more time in little studies on Zooms. It may be that you found it a great blessing in many ways. Maybe you're housebound and normally you wouldn't have so much fellowship with people, but you've been able to do that. Maybe you're a new Christian and you're really struggling to understand where God is in everything. So I would tell you to, or ask you really, to look at these verses and think about the 12 months you've gone through and where you've been with God as you've travelled along and what things may have helped you to draw closer, or where maybe you've started to build up some barriers and do things that maybe have pushed God out and maybe made you think, oh, I can't be bothered with that now. You've started to do something else. Maybe it's a time to reflect on these sort of things. So the verses obviously there's 12 of them, and they talk about a time to sow and a time to reap, a time to die, a time to be born. And there will be people who've had new family members who they've hardly seen, babies that are 12 months old and they may have only held once or twice, when normally you'd be able to hug them as many times as you wanted when you saw them. It might be you've never actually seen them physically because your family members live quite a way off around the country and you've just not been able to travel. You may have lost a loved one, or you may have lost someone who you were dear to, but or they were dear to you, and that you haven't been able to go to their funeral because only the very close family members were able to go, and you feel a real loss. Tell God about it. So in those segments, tell him how you feel about different things that have happened throughout the 12 months. Read the verses and see what God is saying to you. But throughout it all, I'd suggest that you look at this verse as well, 1 Chronicles 16 verse 11. Seek the Lord and his strength. Seek his presence continually. So it's not about you seek God in spring or you seek God in the winter. You seek God continually throughout all the seasons and throughout all the events. And I think it'd be a good exercise really to look back as you go through each of these verses. There's two lots of music. One is a really old hymn, "Oh God, our help in ages past." It was my school hymn, and we sing it at the reunions. And it talks about time. It talks about God being there across time. And it's actually really very thought-provoking for this particular period we've been through. And I never thought I would have said that about the school hymn that I used to have to sing. And then the other piece is about praising God in the storm. There may have been a number of storms as you've gone through this lockdown or throughout your life, really. And we need to be able to come to God and still praise him, still see some good. And the more we come to him when things are difficult, the more we'll realise how close he is to us and how he's helping us. So just looking through the passage, I'm going to break it down into 4 sections. We'll have 4 weeks this month, starting with the 4th of April for week 1. So we're going to look at the first 3 verses and say, think about where you are right now in your faith. Look back and maybe map your journey with God over the whole 12 months. Be thankful and reflect. Maybe consider people you've lost or new additions to the family. Maybe you lost a job. Maybe you've gained a new job, something that you actually enjoy far more than you ever would have imagined. A new path may have opened up for you. But you may have developed a habit that's bad. And that's where it says tear something down. You need to consider that. What are you doing that may be pulling you away from God? And then as you pray this week, pray for the church at Ebenezer. Pray for everybody in it. Get your prayer booklets out and think about those people. And then maybe for those of you who like doing a little bit more, reflect on the life of Moses. He had many seasons, many ups and many downs, and God taught him much. And see where God is in your life. And then from the 11th of April, look at verses 4 to 6. You can think of sad and happy times. Thank God for them and what you've learned and how much more you've trusted in him. And that sort of thing. Consider the idea of embracing and not embracing. Pray for those in our church and people you know who've had very little physical contact. It's not normal. It's not the way we were meant to be, to walk past somebody, to keep 2 meters apart. It isn't how God created us to be. It's difficult. So pray for people who are like that. And maybe if you want to reflect on anything else in the Bible, reflect on the seasons that Joseph went through. Being a favoured son, being a slave, being in prison, being important. Just reflect on all that and make your mind think about how God has dealt with other people through history. And so you're not different. So having these different ups and downs, you're just the same as everybody else, really. In the 3rd week, much has changed politically. Many new laws have been passed. Many things that you might find are quite difficult or you don't agree with. It's something for us to consider. There's certainly a lot of information around gender and that we as Christians and our beliefs are being sidelined. Have a look into that and pray through that and how you feel about what is being said and how Christianity is being marginalised because they don't like the truth of what is in the Bible. It doesn't fit with what's being said. But also pray for the decision makers, pray for the politicians that they get it right, that they bring us out of the lockdown and we regain the freedom that we've always had in this country. If you're looking at anybody in the Bible, maybe look at Hosea. He had a lot he had to say to the people, and it was difficult. And God gave him a very difficult season in his life in order to bring his message across. And finally, verses 9 to 12. Consider the endlessness of God. He exists outside of time and yet interacts with everybody within time. Praise and thank him for things that have happened in your life. Maybe look at the things across the year. You might actually want to reflect further back of when maybe you first became a Christian, how you've grown, how you've developed, how you've gone down, how you've gone up. There's lots of things you can reflect here on how God has sustained you across the years. You might be a new Christian, so you can only reflect on those bits, but you can also maybe look back and think, well, actually, I think God may have been looking after me when I didn't even realise it. You know, that God was there, or people were in your life that pointed you to God. You might realise that they were there when at the time you didn't. Maybe look at praying for those people who've influenced you as you've gone along in your journey. So it's really quite an interesting idea. 12 months, different seasons, different times, 12 verses. What is God saying to you, and how can it make your prayer life this month more interactive and help you to draw closer to God? So hopefully you'll enjoy your clock and what this passage brings for you.